G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Sean and today we're doing something very exciting, a little bit different, but big thank you to Deepcool for making this video possible. They have sent over a whole heap of Deepcool products, power supplies, fans, CPU coolers, GPU support brackets, as well as a new and exciting case. This is the Matrix 50 Mesh 4FS case. I hope I got that right. And what we're going to be doing is taking apart my own personal PC, putting all of those components into this case with all of these extra accessories and seeing how it actually performs. But more importantly, it's, I guess, a way for me to show you that you can get a lot of things from one company to make your build that much easier. Not knowing, I guess, which part from which company to get can be quite daunting if you're a new timer or a first timer to PC building. So getting everything from one company does make a lot of sense. So we're taking a little bit of inspiration from Linus at Linus Tech Tips when he did a video featuring another company and all of their parts, which are very, very expensive. And we're going to do a very, very similar thing, but with all Deepcool parts. So very, very cool. Big thank you once again to Deepcool. Now, if you guys like this kind of content and you like this video, support the channel by hitting the like button, getting subscribed so that way you don't miss out on more content that's like this. And let's begin. Alright guys, so before we get into the PC build, I'm just going to take a moment to talk about each of these accessories just for a minute or two, just so that way you have a bit more information about these parts in case they are parts that you're maybe interested in for your next PC build, or maybe you're looking at upgrading some parts inside of your existing PC build. The fans, the MF120 GT, this is a 120mm fan. You can get them as a 3-pack, which is what I've got here. I've actually got 2 sets. We're going to be putting 6 of them into this case. I really do like this X pattern on the fan. I think it's different to the rest of the competition that's out there, which makes them more interesting and unique in my opinion. They will sync with, you know, your different motherboard manufacturers. I use ASUS AuraSync for example, but they will work with Gigabyte, MSI, ASRock, or if you want to, you can just go ahead and use the ARGB controller that comes in the box to manually control and choose your colors if that's what you want to do. They're a PWM fan as well, so that means you can control the speed of the fans in your motherboard software or in the BIOS. And all in all, like, these fans actually are really, really good. Don't make a lot of noise and are very, very good at keeping everything nice and cool and nice and quiet. So moving on to the CPU cooler. I almost said power supply then. CPU cooler, this is the AEST 500 Plus. It's an air tower cooler, 140mm fans. You get 2 of those pre-installed, which is something that's really nice. Being able to just open the box and everything's already attached for you is really, really cool. And then you've got this addressable RGB section on the top of the cooler as well if you do want to have, you know, a bit of extra bling. Otherwise you can just go ahead and leave that disconnected or turn that off if that's what you want to do. But this is a mammoth cooler, 164mm in height, total height. It will clear all of your RAM, so it doesn't matter if you've got big heat spreaders on your RAM or if you've got, you know, incy-wincy ones. This will not create any issues at all. The main focus, I guess, on this cooler is that it is very, very quiet. Having 140mm fans means that you don't have to spin them really, really fast. You can actually have them rotating a little bit slower, which produces less noise, but still a lot of airflow. And it is rated up to a 200-watt CPU. So for myself, I have a 5900X, 12-core, 24 threads from AMD. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this can deal with that CPU, which does output a lot of heat. If you are running Intel or AMD, by the way, it does come with the brackets in the box, so you can use this cooler on either one. There's no real, like, you know, you can only use it on AMD or Intel. It can do both. Now for the power supply, we've got the DQ 750-M-V2L power supply. It's a fully modular power supply, 80 plus gold, 10-year warranty, totally modular as well, and you've got these nice black flat cables. So if you don't have, you know, cable mod cables or anything like that, this will still look really, really nice. You don't have that you know, spaghetti cable mess like your old power supplies. This one is a premium power supply with these nice black cables, and you can just, you know, put in the cables that you need to keep all of your cable runs nice and clean and simple. And these power supplies, like, I've already got one of them. I've already got the 850, and they are very, very quiet because they are rated at 80 plus gold, which means they are very, very efficient, and I've never had my PC crash because of a power related thing. And that's probably the worst thing to have happen, is to cheap out on the power supply and risk, midstream or mid-work, you lose a whole bunch of information. That's probably the worst case scenario. So I give my, stamp of approval for these power supplies because I've already been using them for such a long time. Now, the next thing, something a little bit different and maybe not necessary for everyone that's out there, but for myself with a 2070 Super, the Strix model, which is a big, hefty, thick card. Down the bottom there, we've got an ARGB GPU support bracket. So the reason why you have one of these is if you've got a big graphic card with a big heatsink on it, over time, over a few years, you might notice that if you don't have any support there, that graphic card might start to sag and start to bend and warp. And if you're planning on reselling your graphic cards, that can actually impact, obviously, the sale value, but also, more importantly, it should actually be something that you're thinking about to make sure your graphic card is just going to last 3 or 4 years, because a bent or a warped PCB can actually be something that can cause your graphic card to fail if it's flexing too much because of that heatsink. And something else you might want to consider is getting one of these if you're planning on shipping or selling your PC or sending it to someone in another place or another country where it has to go through freight. Giving it as much support as possible is obviously important, and the fact that you've got some ARGB on there as well to sync everything up together is just going to make it really, really nice. And then the last little thing in terms of small accessories is this guy down the bottom here. But this is an ARGB remote controller. So if you don't want to sync it with your motherboard, you can actually just go ahead and use that little guy as like a little remote, and you don't have to press buttons on the case or anything like that. You can just use the remote to go ahead and change and choose the colors and the patterns and the cycles and all that kind of stuff, the speed, all through the remote controller. If you don't want to use the remote, you can actually just go ahead and wire it into your reset button on the case as well, so that way you can actually control everything from the outside, which is really, really cool. So that it's really nice to see a company like Deepcool thinking about all these kind of things. What happens if the remote dies? Well, there's a backup. You can use the button on the case. Really, really nice. So that's all the accessories. And now I guess the main thing is probably the case that we're going to be putting it in. So the Matrix, let me get this right, Matrix 50 Mesh 4FS. I guess 4FS stands for 4 fans. Mesh stands because there's mesh on top, mesh on the front. But this case comes with 4 pre-installed RGB fans. We're going to take three of them from the front out of the case. We're going to replace them with the MF120 GTs. Totally overkill, totally don't have to do that. But we're going to do that because we can. And then we're going to put 3 in the top, and we're going to leave the 1 in the back here. It's a mid-tower case, so this will fit your ATX motherboards, your graphic cards like your 3070s and 3080s and stuff like that. You've got a power supply basement to hide all of your cables, tempered glass on the side. In this case, only goes for $99, so really, really good value. USB 3 at the front here, plus 2 USB 2s, headphone, microphone jack, power and reset, which it's pretty much everything that you need in a case for this price point. And because it's got a real focus on airflow and mesh and fans, it's going to do a really good job of keeping everything nice and cool. But once we've got everything in and it's done, we're going to actually fire up some games, fire up some benchmarks, put the system under a load, and see how noisy or how hot everything gets. But I have a very, very strong feeling that this will not be very hot or loud because of how much airflow is going to be going through this system. So that's pretty much it. That's all the accessories in the case. Let's get this build started, and I'll see you guys in a little bit once it's all done so we can go through those benchmarks. Alrighty guys, so here we are. PC build is completely done. We've got those 3 MF120 GT fans in the front, pulling air in, and then if we spin it around on the Lazy Susan, you can see we've got 2 more MF120s pushing that air out. The MF120 at the back exhausting, so the top and the back is for exhaust. And then we've got the AEST 500 Plus massive CPU cooler here with the 2 140mm fans. Down the bottom, we've got that Deepcool GPU support bracket, which is providing tons of support for the 2070 Super, which is a very, very big graphic card, by the way. And one thing that I didn't really make a note of was the fact that this GPU support bracket is actually able to be adjusted based on the width of the card. So if you do have a card that's a little bit chunky, a little bit wider, that this card, the GPU support bracket can support those I guess larger cards. The power supply, as you can see, we've got those black flat modular cables, which are quite discreet, very, very hard to notice, and on a black case with those black cables makes everything look extra premium for a very, very cheap price point. Spinning it around though, I was a little bit worried, I guess, about this, this mesh front panel. Obviously it's gonna bring in a lot of fresh air, but it's also gonna possibly be a bit of a dust magnet. But what turns out is that this front panel here, which is very, very easy to remove, you just take that off and you can go ahead and you can give that mesh panel a clean, a vacuum to get all of that dust off there, which is really, really easy. And then we've got those MF120 GT fans there that you can go ahead and vacuum and clean if you want to do that. Now, one other cute little thing was obviously this little ARGB controller here. So what this controller allows you to do is to go ahead and change all of the different colors and patterns of the RGB using the remote control here. So if we press down the plus, and we keep doing that, it will increase the, I guess, the transition of those RGBs. If we press the minus symbol, it will slow it down. And if we press the M button, which is hard to see here, but you can basically just change through the different patterns that are here, which is really, really nice. So being able to sort of control your RGB without software for some people is actually a big thing. And then if you want to, you can just go ahead and hold the power down for about 5 seconds, and that will turn off the RGB on those case fans or anything else that you have synced up with that 3-pin 5-volt connection on the back with the remote. If you want to go ahead and, if you lose the remote and you want to go ahead and turn on those RGB fans, you can actually program it as well. So you can plug it in to your case reset button. If we hold that down for a few seconds, everything comes back on again. So really, really cool that they've got a backup option in case you lose the remote or you break it or whatever the case, mind the pun, might be. So all in all, really, really cool build, really simple to put together. Lots of, nice touches on those fans. The CPU cooler is really, really cool. I do like that a lot. Very, very quiet because it is those big 140mm fans, 2 of them actually. But considering the price point here of a $99 case, let me see if I can get that in there as well. Put that back on. Really simple to put together, really simple to maintain, and yeah, for $99 for a case. Obviously it's got tempered glass on the side as well, which is currently off because otherwise we just get tons of reflection. But once we put that glass panel on, it does look really, really professional and really schmick. So let's get it off the table. Let's put it back into its other spot. We'll get some games fired up, get some benchmarks running, and let's see how actual hot and how loud this computer gets. All right, guys, so we've got the computer, set up. It's all plugged in and turned on, obviously, and we've had some benchmarks running now for a little while. This is probably my 5th or 6th run of running the Tomb Raider benchmark, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. This is running at 1440p, 144 Hertz, buttery smooth. Let's try and get this in focus here. So roughly getting 90 to 100 frames a second. CPU and GPU, are still well and truly managed. The GPU getting up to 68, 69 degrees, CPU getting up to the high 80s, 86, 87 on an air cooler, considering that the 5900X is a really difficult CPU to get cool. Being able to keep everything nice and quiet, nice and calm. The fans are barely spinning up. They're spinning at, maybe 600, 700 RPM. It's probably going to be really hard to get that in focus on the hardware monitor. But, considering we've done this benchmark now 5 or 6 times, it's going to give you a pretty indicative I guess, example of what kind of performance you're going to get with your system. And if you're not running high-end hardware like a 5900X or a 2070 Super, you're obviously going to get even better performance, because those are components. Those components of mine anyway are outputting a ton of heat. So all in all, really, really good system. Really happy with it. What we might do now though is we might go ahead and just finish up these benchmarks. And we'll do one last little test, which is just putting the microphone up to it, just so that you can hear it for a few seconds. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to move the camera away from the monitor to the computer. I'm just going to put the microphone sort of up to the edge of the glass here, just so you can sort of hear how loud or how quiet it is. So I'll just shut it for about 10 seconds so you can get a bit of an idea. Alright guys, so as you can see, a very, very quiet system, considering we're running these benchmarks and everything is under a full load. Very, very quiet computer, so it's going to be absolutely fine in your bedroom or in a family room. It's not going to make really any noise at all. So yeah, really cool system. So guys, what do you think of this PC build? Is this something that you would potentially do? Get everything from one company just to make everything, I guess, a little bit easier? I'd love to hear from you guys, so let me know down in the comment section. If you want to continue the conversation, I'll leave links to my social media and my Discord down there as well. And I'm live every Friday night on YouTube to chat with you guys and answer any other questions that you might have, as well as just, hanging out and just having a good time. Big thank you to Deepcool once again for making this video possible, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video. Cheers.